Hello, family. Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so. Set in late 18th century Martinique, Never Trade the Love of a Slave follows a forbidden romance between Amadou, a strong-willed young slave, and Celestine, a gentle house servant. Their love is tested by the cruelty of plantation life, the threat of separation, and the hope for freedom. Through courage, sacrifice, and the power of their bond, they challenge the fate imposed upon them. Never Trade the Love of a Slave. Chapter 1. Morning in the Cane Fields. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, casting a gentle amber glow across the vast expanse of sugarcane fields that stretched endlessly beneath the awakening sky. The stalks swayed softly in the morning breeze, their green blades shimmering like waves on a restless sea. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and dew, mingled with a faint, sweet aroma of crushed sugarcane leaves. It was a world of harsh beauty, a place where nature thrived even as human spirits were shackled. Amadou rose with the sun, his body aching before the day had even begun. The rough straw mat beneath him offered little comfort, and the chill of the early morning air bit at his skin. His muscles, honed by years of relentless labor, protested as he stretched, but he welcomed the familiar pain. It was a reminder that he was still alive, still fighting in a world that sought to break him. He sat on the edge of the small wooden hut that served as his quarters, rubbing his hands together to chase away the cold. His skin was a rich, deep brown of fertile soil, marked here and there by scars, silent witnesses to past punishments and struggles. His face was strong and angular, with high cheekbones and a broad nose, but it was his eyes that held the most power. Dark and intense, they burned with a quiet fire, a flame of hope and defiance that refused to be snuffed out. The plantation was a sprawling estate on the island of Martinique, owned by a wealthy French family whose fortunes were built on the backs of enslaved men and women like Amadou. The sugarcane fields, endless and unforgiving, were the heart of this cruel enterprise. From dawn until dusk, the slaves toiled under the watchful eyes of overseers, their bodies bent and broken by the weight of chains and the whip. Amadou rose and grabbed his machete, its wooden handle worn smooth by years of use. He stepped out into the cool morning air, the dew soaking his bare feet as he made his way toward the fields. The ground was soft and uneven, dotted with the footprints of those who had come before him, footprints that told stories of pain, endurance, and sometimes escape. As he entered the fields, the overseer's whistle pierced the air, sharp and commanding. Monsieur Duval, a burly man with a thick beard and cold blue eyes, stood atop a small hill, his figure silhouetted against the rising sun. His presence was a constant reminder of the brutal authority that ruled the plantation. His whip hung at his side, ready to lash out at any sign of weakness or defiance. "Move faster," Duval shouted, his voice cutting through the morning calm like a blade. "No rest for the lazy." Amadou's jaw tightened. He wiped the sweat from his brow and gripped his machete tighter. The work was back-breaking, the sun already climbing higher and promising a day of relentless heat. But his spirit remained unbroken. Each swing of the blade was a small act of rebellion, a step closer to a dream he dared not speak aloud. Far above the fields, the grand plantation house stood like a fortress on a hill. Its whitewashed walls gleamed in the morning light, a stark contrast to the toil and suffering below. From the veranda, the mistress of the house watched silently, her pale eyes cold and distant. But it was not her gaze that Amadou feared most. Inside the house, moving with quiet grace through the polished halls and bustling kitchens, was Celestine. She was a young woman of gentle beauty, her skin a warm, honey brown that caught the light softly. Her hair was a cascade of soft curls, framing a delicate oval face marked by large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. Petite and slender, she moved with a quiet dignity, her every gesture imbued with a strength born of necessity. Celestine was a house servant, tasked with duties that kept her close to the family but far from freedom. She wore a simple dress of faded blue cotton, the fabric worn thin from years of washing and mending. Around her neck hung a small wooden bird, carved by her own hands, a symbol of hope and freedom she cherished in secret. She paused at the window overlooking the fields, her breath fogging the glass as she watched Amadou labor below. Her heart ached with a mixture of longing and fear. Their love was a secret, fragile and forbidden, yet it was the only thing that gave her strength. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent exchange filled with unspoken promises and desperate hope. Amadou's gaze held hers steady, a beacon in the darkness of their lives. But the overseer's whistle shattered the fragile peace, and Amadou turned back to his work, his shoulders squared against the weight of the world. The day stretched on, long and brutal. The sun rose high, beating down mercilessly, turning the fields into a furnace. Sweat poured down Amadou's face, mixing with dirt and tears he dared not shed. His muscles screamed with each swing of the machete, but he did not falter. Each cut was a small rebellion, a step toward a future he could barely imagine. Meanwhile, inside the house, Celestine moved quietly through her tasks, her mind filled with thoughts of Amadou. She stole moments to touch the wooden bird, tracing its rough edges with her fingers. It was imperfect, but it was haze, a talisman against despair. As the afternoon wore on, the overseer's gaze grew sharper. Monsieur Duval was a man who ruled with fear, his temper as volatile as the Caribbean storms. He watched Amadou closely, suspicion flickering in his cold eyes. The slightest hesitation or glance toward the house could mean punishment. At one point, Duval's whip cracked through the air, striking a nearby slave who had faltered. The sharp cry echoed across the fields, a brutal reminder of the consequences of weakness. Amadou's heart clenched, but he kept his head down, focusing on the endless task before him. He could not afford to be broken. Not yet. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cane, Amadou made his way toward the quarters. His body was exhausted, but his mind was restless. The day's labor had not dimmed the fire inside him. That evening, beneath a sky sprinkled with stars, Amadou and Celestine met in the hidden garden behind the plantation house. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and night-blooming flowers, a small oasis of peace in a world of cruelty. They sat close, hands entwined, sharing whispered dreams of freedom. Amadou held the wooden bird she had carved, tracing its edges with reverence. "One day," he said softly, "we will be free. No chains, no masters." Celestine's eyes shone with tears. "I believe in us," she whispered, "but we must be careful. The overseer watches." Their time together was brief, stolen from a world that sought to keep them apart. As they parted, their hearts heavy but hopeful, the distant howl of dogs echoed through the night, a chilling reminder that freedom was a dangerous dream. Back in his quarters, Amadou lay awake, the wooden bird clutched tightly in his hand. The pain of the day lingered in his muscles, but the ache in his heart was sharper. Yet, beneath the pain, a fierce determination burned. He would fight for their love. He would fight for freedom, no matter the cost. Chapter 2, Whispers in the Shadows, continued and completed. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, its silver light filtering through the dense canopy of the tropical forest that bordered the plantation. Beneath the ancient trees, a small group of enslaved men and women huddled close, their faces etched with exhaustion, fear, and a fierce determination that refused to be extinguished. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and jasmine, mingled with a faint crackle of a small fire that cast flickering shadows across their faces. Jek, the elder among them, his graying hair and weathered skin telling stories of decades spent in bondage, spoke in a voice low and urgent. "We have lived too long under the lash. Our bodies are broken, but our spirits remain. We dig not just for ourselves, but for those who will come after us." Marie, standing tall despite the weariness in her eyes, nodded firmly. "Tonight, we risk everything. The tunnel must be finished before the next moon. We cannot wait longer." Celestine, her small frame wrapped tightly in a worn shawl, listened intently. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. She had become the messenger, the lifeline between those imprisoned and those planning freedom. Every day was a gamble. Every step could lead to discovery, punishment, or worse. She clutched the wooden bird that hung around her neck, its rough edges worn smooth by her fingers. It was more than a token. It was a promise that love and freedom were worth fighting for. As the group dispersed into the shadows, Celestine slipped silently through the underbrush toward the plantation house. The path was treacherous, the risk of being caught by the overseer or his men ever present. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she moved, every rustle of leaves potential alarm. Inside the grand house, the air was thick with tension. Madame Lefleur, the mistress, sat by the window, her pale face drawn and weary. Though she held power over the household, she was trapped in her own gilded cage, a woman bound by society's expectations and the cruel institution that enriched her family. Celestine approached cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. "Madam, I beg you, Amadou suffers. He is strong, but the darkness consumes him." Madam's eyes softened, a flicker of sympathy breaking through her usual cold demeanor. "I wish I could help, child, but Duval's grip is iron. The law side with the masters, not the enslaved." Celestine bowed her head, fighting back tears. "Then I must find another way." Back in the slave quarters, Amadou sat in the dim light of his cell, the wooden bird resting in his palm. The days blurred into nights, each one marked by pain and longing. Yet the carved bird was a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of Celestine's love and the hope that sustained him. When Celestine's visits came, they were brief and dangerous. She would slip food and water through the bars, her fingers brushing his in moments charged with unspoken emotion. "Hold on," she whispered each time. "We will be free." But danger was never far. Pierre, the jealous rival, prowled the plantation like a predator. His envy had driven him to betray the lovers once, and now he sought to root out the rebellion before it could take flight. One evening, as Celestine returned from the quarters, Pierre stepped from the shadows, blocking her path. His eyes glittered with malice. "You think your love will save you? It will be your ruin." Celestine met his gaze unflinchingly. "Love is stronger than chains." Pierre sneered. "We'll see." The tension on the plantation grew unbearable. Duval's cruelty intensified, punishment harsher, the overseer's eyes sharper. Every whispered conversation was laced with fear, every glance laden with suspicion. Yet, beneath the surface, the fire of rebellion burned brighter. The tunnel grew longer, carved painstakingly by hands raw and bleeding. Each scoop of earth was a defiance, each secret meeting a step toward freedom. One night, as the group worked by candlelight, a sudden noise shattered the silence, a twig snapping underfoot. Hearts froze. Was it a patrol? A spy? Jack motioned for silence, eyes scanning the darkness. The moment stretched, taut and fragile. Then a familiar voice whispered, "It's me." Celestine emerged from the shadows, breathless but determined. "I have news." Duval grows suspicious. "We must move faster." The group exchanged grim looks. The time for waiting was over. In the days that followed, preparations accelerated. Food was gathered, routes planned, and courage summoned. Celestine's role became even more perilous as she carried messages between the imprisoned and the conspirators. Amadou's strength waned, but his resolve never faltered. Each visit from Celestine rekindled the flame within him. "Never trade the love of a slave," he whispered one night, holding her hand tightly. "It is our greatest treasure." As the moon reached its zenith, the night of escape arrived. The slaves gathered near the tunnel entrance, faces pale but eyes bright with hope and fear. The air was thick with anticipation. Celestine's heart thundered as she slipped through the darkness, the wooden bird clutched tightly. She met Amadou at the cell, the key hidden in her palm. With trembling hands, she unlocked the door. Freedom was a breath away, but so was danger. The tunnel awaited, narrow and dark, a passage to a new life or a grave. Together, hand in hand, they stepped into the unknown. Chapter 3. The Price of Freedom. The night was thick with tension, the air heavy and humid as Amadou and Celestine slipped quietly through the narrow tunnel beneath the plantation fence. The earth pressed close around them, damp and cold, the scent of soil and roots filling their nostrils. Each step was measured, careful. The faint sound of their breathing mingled with the distant chorus of crickets and the rustling of leaves outside. Amadou's hand gripped Celestine's tightly, their fingers entwined like lifelines tethering them to hope. The wooden bird she had given him hung from his neck, a fragile talisman against the darkness. Their hearts pounded in unison, a steady drumbeat of fear and determination. Behind them, the other slaves followed in silence, their faces pale but resolute. Jack and Marie led the way, their experience guiding the group through the treacherous passage. The tunnel was narrow, forcing them to move single file, and the risk of collapse or discovery was ever present. Outside, the plantation lay shrouded in shadows. The grand house loomed like a silent sentinel, its white walls glowing faintly in the moonlight. The overseer's men patrolled the grounds, their voices harsh and their dogs restless. Every second was a gamble, freedom balanced on a knife's edge. As they emerged from the tunnel into the dense forest beyond, a collective breath was held. The cool night air was a balm to their sweat-soaked skin, but the danger was far from over. The forest was thick and wild, a maze of shadows and sounds that could both hide and betray them. Amadou led the group deeper into the trees, his senses alert. The path ahead was uncertain, but the promise of freedom was a beacon guiding them through the darkness. Suddenly, a sharp bark pierced the night. The overseer's dogs had caught their scent. "Run!" Jacques shouted. Chaos erupted as the slaves scattered, branches whipping their faces, roots threatening to trip them. Amadou pulled Celestine close, shielding her as they sprinted through the underbrush. The dogs' baying grew louder, the men's shouts echoing behind them. Fear surged, but so did adrenaline. Every muscle screamed, every breath burned, but they could not stop. Not now. The forest seemed endless, a labyrinth of shadows and danger. Amadou's mind raced. They needed to cross the river, the final barrier between them and safety. "Keep moving," he urged, voice hoarse. Celestine stumbled, her strength faltering. Without hesitation, Amadou lifted her into his arms, his heart pounding with fierce protectiveness. The river was cold and swift, its currents threatening to drag them under. Amadou waded in first, the water biting into his skin, but he pressed forward, carrying Celestine on his back. One by one, the others followed, some struggling, some falling, but all determined. On the far bank, they collapsed, gasping for breath, soaked and shivering. Tears mingled with rain and dirt as laughter broke through the exhaustion, a sound of triumph and relief. But freedom came at a price. The plantation would not forget, and the road ahead was uncertain. Amadou and Celestine embraced, the wooden bird glinting in the dawn light, a symbol of love that endured beyond chains. Chapter 4. The Long Road. The forest darkness was thick and alive, swallowing the small band of fugitives as they pressed deeper into the unknown. With every step, the pain of their flight mingled with the hope that still flickered in their hearts. Amadou led, his arm steady around Celestine, who stumbled but did not fall. Behind them, Jacques, Marie, and the others moved as quietly as they could, each haunted by the memory of chains and the fear of being caught again. The river crossing had left them soaked and shivering, but it was a small prize for the taste of freedom. On the far bank, the group huddled beneath a tangle of roots, catching their breath as the first light of dawn crept through the trees. For a moment, there was only silence, the kind of silence that comes after a storm. But the world was not safe. In the distance, the baying of dogs and the shouts of men echoed through the woods. The overseer, Duval, would not give up easily. He had lost slaves before, but never so many at once, and never his most valuable field hand. The plantation's pride was at stake, and he would not rest until he had them back, or made an example of them. "Keep moving," Jack whispered, his voice rough but kind. "We must put as much distance between us and the plantation as we can before nightfall." They moved in single file, following animal trails and wading through shallow streams to mask their scent. Celestine's feet bled, but she pressed on, her hand never leaving Amadou's. The wooden bird he wore around his neck bounced gently against his chest, a reminder of the promise they had made, never to trade the love of a slave, not for comfort, not for safety, not even for freedom itself. As the sun climbed higher, the heat grew oppressive. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and thirst cracked their lips. Marie, ever resourceful, found wild berries and roots, and Jack showed them how to drink from the leaves of certain plants. But the forest was not generous, and every mouthful was a reminder of how far they still had to go. By midday, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them. They found a hollow beneath a fallen tree and rested, taking turns keeping watch. Amadou's thoughts drifted to the stories he had heard as a child, tales of people who had escaped, who had found freedom in distant lands, who had built new lives far from the reach of the master's whip. He wondered if those stories were true, or if they were just dreams to keep hope alive. As he dozed, Celestine stroked his hair, her fingers gentle despite her own fatigue. "We will make it," she whispered. "We must." But not all shared her optimism. One of the younger men, Samuel, shook his head. "Even if we reach the next town, what then? We are still hunted. There are those who would turn us in for a few coins." Jacques nodded grimly. It is true, but we have come too far to turn back now. We must trust each other, and trust that there are good people in the world. The afternoon passed slowly. The group pressed on, moving deeper into the wilderness. The sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by the calls of birds and the rustling of small animals in the undergrowth. For a while, it almost felt safe. But as dusk fell, a new danger emerged. They stumbled upon a camp. 3 white men with rifles, hunters by the look of them, their fire crackling in the growing darkness. The fugitives froze, hearts pounding. Amadou signaled for silence. They waited, barely daring to breathe, as the hunters laughed and drank, oblivious to the desperate souls hiding just beyond the firelight. It was Jacques who led them away, circling wide through the trees. Only when the camp was far behind did they dare to speak. "That could have been the end of us," Marie whispered, her voice trembling. "But it wasn't," Celestine replied, her eyes fierce. "We are still here." Night fell heavy and cold. They huddled together for warmth, sharing what little food they had left. Amadou held Celestine close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. For the first time since their escape, he allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future. He remembered the stories he had heard, not just of escape, but of reunion, of families torn apart by slavery who found each other again in freedom. He thought of the letter John Boston had written to his wife after escaping, the longing and hope in every line. "My dear wife, it is with great joy I take this time to let you know where I am. I am now in safety. This day I can address you, thank God, as a free man. I can express my great desire that I have to see you. I trust the time will come when we shall meet again." 3. Amadou pressed his lips to Celestine's forehead. "We will make it. I promise you." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "As long as we are together, I have all I need." But even as they clung to each other, the world outside was changing. News of their escape would travel fast. There were those who would help them, free black communities, abolitionists, even some sympathetic whites. But there were also those who would hunt them for profit or out of hatred. Their journey was far from over. There would be more pain, more heartbreak, and more tests of their resolve. But as the stars wheeled overhead and the forest whispered its ancient secrets, Amadou and Celestine held on to the one thing no one could take from them, their love, unbroken and unbowed. Hello, family. The adventure continues as Amadou and Celestine strive to break free from the chains of slavery while fighting for their love. Experience every thrilling moment by tuning into Stories with Pablo. Don't miss episode 2. Check out the channel now. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so.